I was in a meeting once and I gave an analogy to my staff about my philosophy of enforcement, and I think it was probably a little crude and maybe not appropriate for the meeting, but I'll go ahead and tell you what I said. It was kind of like how the Romans used to conquer little villages in the Mediterranean. They'd go into a little Turkish town somewhere, they'd find the first 5 guys they saw, they'd crucify them. And then, that town was really easy to manage for the next few years. And so you make examples out of people who are, in this case, not complying with the law.
It was kind of like how the Romans used to conquer little villages in the Mediterranean. They'd go into a little Turkish town somewhere. They'd find the first 5 guys that they'd run into, and they would crucify them on crosses. And then that town was really easy to manage for the next few years. And so you make examples out of people who are, in this case, not compliant with the law.
Okay. The White House has apologized. Why is that not good enough?
Well, it's not good enough because they lied. Their apology was that they are producing more and taking credit for more production of oil and gas, when in fact the Energy Information Agency says it's all on private land. Federal land is down 17% in the middle of this big boom. Now that's just outrageous that they'd make a statement like that.
Al Armendariz, I believe I said his name right, worked out of Dallas, Texas, was the government at a government meeting in 2010. That's when the video was created. What kind of authority did he have within the EPA?
Well, they have too much authority, and that's the problem. He's he has a whole 6 districts, which includes my state of Oklahoma, and he's able to do these things. It's what he does that nobody knows about. Nobody knew about this for a whole year. And the fact that he has gone after, as I said on the Senate floor, several of these companies, I named several of them, that were not guilty of anything, damaging trashing them for a year, damaging their reputation, threatening them, in this case, with Range Resources, with $33,000 a day fine. And then when they found out that, the courts intervened and they weren't guilty of anything, very quietly they withdrew their charges. That's a problem. Did you happen to see what Daily Caller did to this morning?
I want to ask you about that. DailyCaller.com is reporting that this official that I just mentioned, Armendariz, collected or shared at least $540,000 in taxpayer money from the federal government to fund environmental projects that stretch from 2004 to 2010. Have you heard about that report, and what's your reaction?
Well, yes, I've heard about the report. Daily Caller is the one who brought it up. Ironically, we're doing a study now as to how much money is being spent on this whole agenda that the far left has. And of course, they're aimed, we can't lose sight of the fact, what they're trying to do, the Obama administration, is to kill fossil fuels in America, and using this technique to try to stop hydraulic fracturing. It's I guess it's kind of clever of him to do this, because he can act like he's promoting oil and gas at the same time doing away and damaging the process of hydraulic fracturing. And Bill, you can't get 1 cubic foot of natural gas out of a tight formation without hydraulic fracturing, and it's perfectly safe.
Mr. Speaker, the EPA is out to get you and crucify you. That's the message from one of President Obama's EPA appointees to our country's oil and natural gas companies. Yesterday, we learned that an official at the Environmental Protection Agency, based in Dallas, used the Roman Empire to illustrate the kind of philosophy that he's followed at the EPA. Here's what he said, and I quote, "The Romans used to conquer little villages in the Mediterranean. They'd go into a little Turkish town somewhere, they'd find the first 5 guys they saw, and they would crucify them. And then, that town was really easy to manage for the next few years." And that's exactly what he did as an EPA official, going after a company that was safely using hydraulic fracturing to drill for gas. He led the charge to crucify this company with no proof that the company had done anything wrong in a case that was finally dismissed last month by a federal court. This is enviro-fascism at its worst. And if someone needs to be made an example of, it's this EPA official who disregarded science and facts to rapidly and negligently pursue the Obama administration's war on energy. And I yield back.
So one of the big stories this week, the EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson just wrapping up a town hall meeting in Washington, and she spoke exclusively with Fox News about controversial remarks by a top agency official. Jim Engel has all of this. He's live in Washington with more. Jim?
Hello, Jenna. Well, after speaking at American University, Fox asked Administrator Jackson about the controversy over a regional administrator who had described the EPA's enforcement philosophy as being like the ancient Romans going into a town and crucifying the first 5 people they find in order to make the rest of the town easier to manage. Jackson noted the official in question has apologized and more. Listen.
Dr. Armendariz has apologized. He's acknowledged that his comments were wrong. Frankly, they were inflammatory, but they were also wrong, and they don't comport with either this administration's policy on energy, our policy at EPA on environmental enforcement, nor do they comport with our record as well.
Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma, though, who brought the matter to light, told Fox this morning this is not about going after people who break the law, but rather an effort to intimidate the industry. Listen.
What they're trying to do, the Obama administration, is to kill fossil fuels in America, and using this technique to try to stop hydraulic fracturing. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of clever of him to do this, because he can act like he's promoting oil and gas at the same time doing away and damaging the process of hydraulic fracturing.
Now, that's a process also known as fracking, which is responsible for a lot of the recent gains in oil and gas production on private lands. Jackson did concede to Fox today there are no instances of proven contamination from fracking, though the EPA has accused companies of exactly that in the past. Those in the oil and gas industry were not surprised by the Crucify remarks. 5 refineries serving the East Coast have closed in the last 18 months or so, which the industry says is because of overregulation. Listen.
We've asked the EPA in particular to reconsider a virtual blizzard of new, poorly thought out or unnecessary rules affecting our refining sector.
We really have to take a look at governmental policies and how they impact all refineries across the nation. And heretofore, what we've been looking at is just it's an avalanche of overregulation, sometimes conflicting, where you have different goals coming out of different regulations, and they just don't work together.
Now, Administrator Jackson this morning also criticized House Republicans for what she termed voting against environmental protection, though critics say they're voting against an overzealous agency bent on making life hard for oil and gas producers. Jenna?
Jim Engel in Washington today. Jim, thank you.
You bet.